We also have some comments, I guess, from in our chat box. So, Ika, probably before we go forward with Jalen and Karen, and also I saw someone raising their hand earlier, but of course, since Rena was sharing, we couldn't call. So, I believe that was Andari, if I'm right.
Yeah. Uh, from Saada. Uh, she is from Women Crisis Center Nawal Balkis in Cirebon. She shared about the feminist leadership. So for her, feminist leadership is when women have the space to voice their rights and participate in the public activities, and the challenge that existed, it's like especially in the village, the space for women was still very minimally given for women, and also there's a challenge on the religion and cultural, uh, that which some people interpret as putting restriction on women to stay in the domestic space. So I think that's Saada have shared with us. And from Juwaini, she is from Kalibawang district in Jogja. Uh, she shared about that feminist leadership is leadership that adheres to gender equality and justice, so that it can provide the equal space and opportunities both for women and men, so that that can give the interest of women, children, and the marginalized group. It can be accommodated. For example, in the village level, there are the village council that have the women participation. So they become like the you know uh, like the champion, maybe, yeah, the champion to like to share the aspiration from a women perspective in the village level, and also like and it's because the aspiration from women always obeyed by the village government, the local government. So the majority, the men's interests are considered. So uh, the women always like not considered by the village government. I think that from Juwaini, maybe continue to the guest
Yeah.
first, Syahira, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I will continue the others sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Ika. So, we'll be reading if you're leaving your comments or your insights on our chat. We'll be reading some of them in between. So, for now, let's get back to our guests. So, now it's Jelen's turn from the Philippines. So, just to repeat the question for Karen and Jelen, for you, what is the meaning of feminist leadership and how are you applying it given the political, social, economic, and cultural challenges that you're faced? And if you can give an example, please share it with us. Jelen?
Okay, so mine is basically a combination of what I believe in and what as executive director of WLB, how I also practice it. No, I mean as a leader of the organization. So number one is I think it's an automatic thing for me to have bias for the poor and the marginalized groups of women and girls. I think when we speak of feminist leadership, there's an automatic bias. And I always say that when I attend meetings that I don't have to be defensive about it. I don't have to explain to people why when we have limited resources, for example, if we have $100 and we need to conduct training, we will always say we will prioritize the women and the girls in the community as compared with men. And it's always been some people would always question that, and I always say that I don't have to be defensive about it, because WLB is a feminist organization. I am a feminist, and given the limited resources, we would want to focus more on the target partners of the organization. I think when we also speak of feminism or feminist leadership, we also have to have that perspective. I think it was also mentioned by Rena, no? The awareness of the discrimination, that women are subjected to prejudice and sociocultural norms. I think it's impossible for us to say that we are feminists and yet we don't acknowledge that women are not equal with other genders, no? That they are subjected to a lot of prejudice, to a lot of practices as compared to men, no? I also believe that when we speak of feminist leadership, it requires action, no? Recognition of inequalities, but it needs action. So there are some subtle change that you need to do when you intervene, when you do something in the community. Sometimes people would say, oh, don't rock the boat. But sometimes subtle change may not be enough, no? Especially as a feminist leader. We need to think of bolder and radical changes, even in our family and relationships, no? And I think one of the guiding factors also when we engage with our partner communities as a feminist is we always have to know the context of the group partners that we are working with. We cannot go and, let's say, I can see Ate Sally. Hi, Ate Sally. We cannot go, let's say, to Talisay, to Quezon, to Zambales, and to Samar and say, hey, people, we are the expert here. We know everything. So this is what we're going to do. We need to understand them. We need to know what they need. We need to know what do they want to share to us. What do they want to do? So participation and listening to the voices around you for suggestion might look easy, but it's really difficult, because sometimes as a leader, you always think you know what's best for the organization, for the staff, for your family, because you've learned how to lead, no? But listening is a different aspect, and sometimes it's the most difficult one, because sometimes you have to really listen to things that sometimes you don't agree with, no? And consider it. And then at the end of the day, you need to be flexible. I mean, feminists are not gods. They're not perfect individuals. We are not perfect individuals, and therefore we need to be flexible. We need to adapt. We need to accommodate, no, and negotiate. And I think the last part, how do it? So if, let's say, someone has a problem, let's say whether it's about love life, it's about other lives, it's about relationships, I think the organization should be open to accommodate those challenges or problems experienced by a colleague, and talk about it, no? And last but not the least is, these are principles, but we need to walk the talk. We cannot just say it. We are feminists. We promote sisterhood. We recognize inequalities, but we cannot walk the talk. I mean, we cannot do it. We have to implement it. We have to do it as part of our everyday lives. And as I've said, we are not perfect individuals. We can commit mistakes and unlearn what we've learned in the past and learn something that will create a better feminist leadership. So I think it's an ongoing process for all of us. No? That's it, Anna. Thanks, Shaira.
Thank you, Jolene. It's good to hear someone mention again the continuous process when it comes to feminism, because if we remember, our other past guests have also mentioned that feminism isn't absolute, or just because they're feminists now doesn't mean they're perfect in their way. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things that we will still be hearing not just today, but in our next episode as well. So thank you, Jalen. And now we go on to Karen.
Thank you, Shaira, and all my other sisters for sharing. I agree with all your views. And when you gave me this topic, it's a very fascinating one. I think when we think about feminist leadership, we have to think about what makes it different from other models of leadership. I mean, there are a lot of models of leadership out there, you know, power leaders, hierarchical leaders, effective, strategic, and so on. But what sets feminism apart or feminist leadership apart? For me personally, I'm very inspired by the work of the Indian feminist scholar Srilata Badliwala. And I take from her writings that there are sort of three key areas that makes a feminist leader different from your leader out there. And one is that feminism is about understanding power, okay? Understanding how women are oppressed in society at a personal and public level, and then renegotiating that power, how it's distributed, how it's applied, you know, and what needs to be done to change that. So it's about redistribution of power and responsibilities, fighting social inequalities. And how do we do this? We do this through trying to bring change in structures out there, whether it's the political structure, economic structure, or social structure of society. And a lot of those social structures are actually very psychic. They're deep inside us. These ideas about what women can or cannot do, or what men should and shouldn't do, okay? So the first thing is to understand power and how it plays out. The second distinguishing feature of feminist leadership, I think, is bridging personal and collective freedom. That means it's a very strong understanding that what happens in the personal realm is also very political, bringing what is private or personal out into the public to talk about. For example, domestic violence is not a private issue only, you know, it's public. And thirdly, feminist leadership is about cooperation instead of competition. So it's quite different from other models of leadership out there, where you may try to get your team to do better so that you outperform other people. In feminist leadership, it's different. It's about building bridges. It's about seeing how we can work together towards a common and bigger aim. So I think with these three features in mind, the goal of feminist leadership will be twofold. One is that we always challenge power, no matter how it's used. No matter whether you're leading a group of all women or all men or a mixture of different genders, you always look at visible, hidden, and invisible power. It's not just always about a power difference between women and men alone. Sometimes there are many layers that come into play. You know, what about women who are marginalized compared to women, say women living in remote areas, women from lower income groups, compared to women who are better educated and living in urban areas with better access to resources. There's clearly a power difference there. So like Jalan says, how do we negotiate that and redress that? You know, so we need to constantly interrogate, ask ourselves those questions and challenge that. And secondly, when we identify these power differences, how do we construct alternative models of power, to navigate and rebalance and reorganize our resources so that the gaps are closed? So, I mean, there are a lot of ways that I think about this and apply this both in my personal life and also my professional life, but I want to share at least 4 ways we do it at WCC. The first at our center is that when we counsel clients, and most of our clients are survivors of domestic and sexual violence, we adopt a feminist counseling model. That is, we don't only listen to their problems and say, okay, you know, we know you feel terrible about it, we hear you. But we also challenge them to say what action you want to take from this. What steps do you want to take to come out of your situation and make a difference for yourself, your family, and ultimately also for other women out there? That's one approach. 2, like many of your organizations, our decision-making is also collective. We include many voices in the decision-making, not just those of us who are more senior or in management or in the committee, but also the voices of our younger people. And happy to share that we have 2 interns here among the audience, yeah? Hi, Yili and Yoki, welcome. And they were very much also part of that process of being participating in creating our work. And so we try to include them as much as possible in that decision-making as a collective, help them feel included, help them feel heard. And it's very intergenerational. We have a lot to learn from the young people as well, especially in terms of technological skills, social media skills and all that. okay? And fourthly, we are very aware of intersectional differences. Malaysia, as you know, is a very diverse country in terms of ethnicities and language. And so we make sure that our programs are available in vernacular languages. I think many groups are excluded because of lack of proficiency in the English language. And unfortunately, at the regional level program like this, we have to use English because I don't speak Tagalog and I don't speak Bahasa Indonesia well enough. But in Malaysia, we're mindful that if we use English, then a large majority of the population, especially those who are disadvantaged or marginalized, would not be able to access that. So we try as much as possible to translate our resources and our webinars into Bahasa Malaysia, into Chinese, into Tamil. And we recently translated 2 books on child sexual abuse into the Iban and Kadazuan Dusun native languages of Borneo as well, of Sabah and Sarawak. So those are some of the ways that we try to practice feminist leadership in our organization and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Very great insights from all our guests, no? So especially in the mentioning of collective agenda. So that's another thing that that's been mentioned all throughout from all 4 of our guests. So since we've already mentioned collective agenda or collective decision making, I also want to go back to our other guests from community partners, since they're a huge part of that collective decision making that we all do from the 4 countries that that are represented here today. So Ika, so we're going to read another 2 questions or comments from the chat box.
Okay, Shahira, since we have Auntie here for the interpretation, maybe Shahira, Jalen, Karen, and Yasinta can push the interpretation button and pick the English. So I will read Indonesia and Mbak Auntie will translate. Is it okay? Yeah, okay. Mbak Auntie, maybe you can change to the English button, right? Yeah, okay. I will read the comment from Mbak Lilis Sumila. She is from IP, Ikatan Perempuan Positif Indonesia. So dia sharing terkait dengan kepemimpinan feminis.
About the experience on feminist leadership, that she thought that to be a leader of using the feminist, you have to understand and also apply the equality on the community. For example, also in the organization, for example, every staff, you have to work with your own skill, and they cannot be forced to work without any capacity building. And also they have to
Okay. The second opinion.
Yang kedua adalah
Mbak Evelyn dari Perempuan Aman, organisasi yang fokus di perempuan adat. Jadi menurut Mbak Evelyn, kepemimpinan feminis adalah cara kepemimpinan.
So it is from Evelyn from Perempuan Aman. So actually the feminist leadership for me is the way of women or men to being brave, to open the chance to be the leader without considering any kind of sex or gender or social construction that discriminate, because we know that the roles of men and women is not it's unequal, so that we have to challenge all of the challenges and showing the women that they can be the leader also, and educates the community about the feminist leadership.
Apakah patriarki juga apakah budaya patriarki masih berlaku kuat juga di Filipina dan Timur Leste. Nah, maybe Jelen or Yasanti can answer.
Is that the culture of patriarchy is so strong still in Philippines? So this is one of the questions that raised by Chastra.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ika and Auntie. So, a question that was posed, can the guests hear me? Especially Jalen, because this is for the Philippines. One of the questions that was posed or that came out of the chat is, if similar to Timor-Leste, how is the situation of gender inequality in the Philippines? If it's similar, or is it worse? Is it better? Jalen, what do you think?
As Miss Universe, no? Thank you for that wonderful question. But I think the reason why our colleague from Timor-Leste posted that question is because Timor-Leste and Philippines have similar colonial background. We were colonized by Latin America. I mean, by Portugal, no? Portugal, Spain, no? For the Philippines, Spain, for Portugal, for Timor-Leste. And I would say the church played a big factor in our culture and in our society until now. And I think when we speak of patriarchy, maybe, and that's the reason why I always react in government meetings when they always say that Philippines is in the top 10 of the gender equality index. I know it's a fact, no? I mean, there's factual evidence, but the way it measures gender equality, it only looks into political participation, education, and I forgot the other one, labor participation, I think, no? But it does not really see the other cultural aspects that goes with it that continue to perpetuate inequalities or violence against women. The gender equality index does not really capture the real situation of the Filipino people. And it takes one strong man, a president like we have right now, just to expose the kind of patriarchal values that we have are embedded in our society. No? It takes just one man. No? And I keep on saying that it's there for the longest time. It's just that because it's covered by the achievements of the women's movement, we have a very strong feminist movements in the Philippines, but it's because of that, that's why we're on top 10. But it's not necessarily translate to government actions. No? So I think the answer in short is yes, it's very embedded, and it's because of a result of the Catholic Church and other factors, no, and other factors that continue to perpetuate patriarchy in our society.
Thank you, Jalen. So I'll speak in Tagalog for our Filipino participants here. Kayo po ba, may nagtanong po from Timor-Leste na tinatanong nila kung kamusta daw po ang sitwasyon natin ng kababaihan sa Pilipinas. Kung maganda ba, maayos ba, o nakakaranas pa rin tayo ng diskriminasyon. So gusto po naming marinig din anong masasabi nyo dito. Ano po ba tingin nyo? Maganda po ba ang sitwasyon nating mga kababaihang Pilipino sa Pilipinas ngayon? Pwede nyo pong sabihin sa chat box at babasahin po namin mamaya. Yun. So, gusto rin po namin marinig ang inyong masasabi sa tanong na to. Salamat. So, mag-comment po kayo at hihintayin namin. Yan. So, thank you again for that question and for your response, Jillian. So, moving on, we mentioned earlier that COVID-19 has redefined challenges for every one of us. And you mentioned, of course, the economic, social, cultural, and political challenges that feminist leaders face even before COVID-19. So, in the context of the pandemic, many of us are working, of course, with local women's organizations, as you've all mentioned, and the pandemic has rendered many of us unable to continue our old ways of working. So, everything felt entirely new and posed a really big challenge for all of us. So, given how you defined what feminist leadership is to you and to your organization, the question now is, were you able to practice feminist leadership despite the ongoing pandemic? And is it possible to just go on and survive or leave behind our feminism? So for this round, let's have Rena go first. So Rena,
Yes,
yeah. So
thank you, Sheila. So I think in the context of COVID, feminist leadership can be also applied in the family. So during this pandemic in Indonesia, so despite of there is problem that women face, multiple burden because of working from home policy from the government, but there is also facts that women are strong and smart to address the problem of the impact of the pandemic. So women play important role in building family survival strategies to overcome the impact of COVID. So for example, many women take initiative to find new economic sources when their husbands are not working anymore because of laid off by the company. For example, by selling online, and then women in informal sector, so who sell a vegetable or the seller women. So they still work, and then I know they face a high risk to for COVID-19, but I want to show that women is very strong to survive for herself and her family. And of course, the government should also protect these women as vulnerable group from COVID-19. And women are also decision makers to manage limited family income so that families can survive during a pandemic. And also because during the working from home policy, women also have high creativity to accompany their children to study, because a lot of children face difficulties for online learning method. So the women, they have a lot of creativity to make their children enjoy and also understand the learning from their teacher. And women are at the forefront of family health by maintaining the immunity of family members. So the women remind all the family members to eat fruits, to eat vegetables, to eat vitamins for the family immunity. And then also if the one of family member is exposed to COVID, so it is women who become a leader. I mean, women are very busy seeking information, how to access COVID care services, and how to also how to handle the problem of who family member are exposed to COVID. So I know this is in one side, this is multiple burden for women during pandemic, but during the pandemic also the community, the people also know that women is very strong and smart to survive, to survive because of pandemic. And Kayana Mitra, together with several women's organizations, has conducted a study on best practice carried out by women in overcoming pandemic situations in the community. For example, we find facts or example from the community that women who took the initiative to raise awareness to their neighbor whose family's member were exposed to COVID by giving food every day to the family who the family member are exposed to COVID, by placing vegetables and cook food in front of the house of the family who are one of the members exposed to COVID. So this is how women try to care, to build care of the neighbor and care each other if their neighbor exposed to COVID. So solidarity, care to each other in the society, that if there is a member of society exposed to COVID. So women initiate that that kind of good best practice. And then a female teacher who have one female teacher, yeah, this is one best practice also. She has innovations to do outreach to homes of students who have difficulty doing online learning, and she uses interesting learning method for students. So of course there is also prevention of for COVID, to prevent COVID. I mean, still using mask and then still attention for the distance, something like that. So even the teacher do outreach. So I mean, it showed that as a teacher, she has innovation, and she has also care to the children who have difficulty to doing online learning, because maybe because they don't have mobile phone in village area, something like that. So it means that during pandemic, there is a lot of best practice from the I think feminist leadership, yeah, feminist leadership in the family, in the society. So we can there is a lot of example that prove that women are strong, women are smart, and women can do multiple tasking to handle the problems. But I know this is also in one side is the multiple burden, but in other side, we also can say that yes, women are strong, but we should also raise the awareness to public, to our society, that responsibility to take care the children or doing household works is not only a responsibility of women, but also responsibility of all members of the family, the husband, the children. So we should do that education to our community. I think that's all, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. So, just to reiterate or sum up what Rena has shared for our viewers, Kalyana Mitra has community partners or activities with ongoing activities with their community partners even during COVID-19, and she shared the stories of their women partners or the local community women during the year or the past year dealing with COVID-19. So it was very evident how multiple burden, of course, was an experience or a common experience for women. And I think the other guests might be able to share similar stories as well. I don't know. But also in the Philippines, it was an issue for our community partners or women community partners, the multiple burden of balancing being household carers and being women leaders during the COVID-19 or the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think I'll let the guests share more on that. So this time I'll call on Jalen from the Philippines. Jalen?
Yes. So Shara, basically during the pandemic, I think I would say it was really challenging, no? Because when it happened, I became the sole breadwinner of the family. So I came from a family of migrants. So, and my sister who's supporting her son, I think she has to not really stop working, no? But she cannot, her salary is half, no, is almost half, no, and instead of just returning home, it will be more dangerous for her. So we discussed that she better stay in the Middle East as an office worker and preserve her life, no. So that was actually our arrangement. The same with my brother. My brother is also in the Middle East, but and again, of course, he's supporting his family. So so at the time, it was more of acceptance in terms of the role of my role in the family, and then at the same time my role in the organization. So actually, I think it took a while, no. I think I did a lot of reflection. What should I do? And then with all what's happening, the hullabaloo in the Philippines, all the news, we have so that our colleagues from Southeast Asia would know, we have, the Philippines has the longest lockdown, no. We started March 15, March 16 to be exact. And then until now, we're still on lockdown. So just imagine when the lockdown was declared, even us, we don't have, I remember I only have, let's say, $50 in my ATM account. So it means that's the liquidated amount. No? So it means if I need to spend money for my family, I have money, but it's in the bank. So and since the bank are closed, every establishments are closed, even the organizations are closed. Our partner communities need funds, but all banks are closed. We cannot go to the office. So just imagine all the problems, no? So we were actually trying to make fun out of it, that we have money, but we cannot even access it. So during the pandemic, we never lost touch with our partner communities. So it was a decision on our part. I would say my decision, I would say, as head of the organization, to continue engaging with the communities, no. I actually, we met, and then we discussed that we need to document. I told the group, my colleagues, including Shira and the rest of the team, that we need to start documenting what's happening to our partner communities, with or without funds. So even if we need to spend money, get money from WLB's fund, even if it will not be supported by the funding organization, our funding partners, we need to document what's happening on the ground. Are there violations? Anything, no? Anything, any stories. So that's what happened, no? At the start of the lockdown. So I remember we came out with 2 COVID-19 reports as early as April, no? And it was we wrote it very fast. All of us, everybody in the office wrote and interviewed all our partner communities. Even our partner communities were involved and part of it. They were actually documenting on the ground and sharing those stories to us. They did not even question, are we going to get funds? Are you going to give us food for that? They just freely give all those information. But it's also very disheartening to really to keep receiving text messages from women leaders saying, this is what's happening to them, like where do they get where they will get food, how they will survive during the lockdown. They cannot get out of the place. What should they do? So what we did was, every information that we gathered, because we live in Metro Manila, in the capital, we automatically share it. No, we always say, okay, share it to the partner communities, and then we tell them, if you need any question, please let us know. We will try to explain it to them, because most of the information shared by the Philippine government are all in English. And maybe in countries like Malaysia, maybe English is easier. But in the Philippines, although some people say that Filipinos are good in English, but we're not. No, hindi tayo talaga malalakas lang ang loob natin sa English. No, we are just very strong. We're strong. We want to say that we can speak English, but actually sometimes it's really difficult for us. No, we have different languages. So the information we gathered, we translate it from English to Tagalog, or sometimes to other languages like Baray, because a colleague from the organization can speak the local language. No, but for the others, it's just Tagalog. And then we also discuss health protocols. we need to change policy. Because, for example, before we don't pay, let's say, transportation amounting to this amount. But how can they go from one place to another to attend, let's say, this webinar? If before you only give them, let's say, $2, or before you need receipt, but now there's no receipt. So we need to also adjust our policy. We need to also adjust budgets, no? And I think that part, we always have to defend it, no? Defend that part, because we have to justify, oh, why are you spending this amount of money? I really thought about it. Can we stop being a feminist NGO? Can we just focus on ourselves and our families? Can I just focus on my family and just survive, no? And just try to survive. But I can't, no? We can't. I think most of us, we can, because when we introduce ourselves, we're still part of these organizations. So I think the advocacy work that goes beyond, the advocacy work goes beyond the pandemic. It sounds cliche, cheesy, and we say in Filipino, corny or melodramatic, but feminist work and leadership is really part, no? I think, of our everyday life in WLB, and I would say also part of my everyday life. It's difficult to just say, I'll stop and I'll not do anything. So those are my answers, Shaira and Ika.
Thank you, Jalen. Thank you, Jalen. Yeah. So I won't add anything, because that's basically the nature of WLB when COVID-19 began here in the Philippines, or the lockdown here began in the Philippines last year. So quickly moving on, maybe call on Karen to share on the same question.
Thank you, Shaira. I'll answer the second question first, which is it possible to leave your feminism behind in the time of COVID? And my personal answer, and I hope that it's a collective answer for many, is no. Not only because feminism is so much part of my life and who I am in terms of my identity, how I think, but also, if nothing else, this pandemic has shown us how deep the inequalities in our societies run. Now is not the time to leave our feminist principles behind. Now is really, if anything, the time to step in, to tighten solidarity in whatever way we can. And now that we see how broken the system is for people out there, this is the time to step in and do whatever we can, whatever it takes to fix it and to redress the gaps. So at WCC, I think we are very fortunate to say that we have been able to practice our work, practice feminist leadership despite the pandemic. And we've been able to do that for many reasons. One is that we are an established organization. We never forget that. We've been around for 36 years. We've had thousands of supporters throughout the years, so much goodwill. We're very blessed. And Penang, the state where we're located, is also very blessed in the sense that we're very technologically enabled. It's moving towards becoming a smart state. Internet connection is relatively good here, relatively strong. Almost everyone has a smartphone and access to social media. So we've been able to pivot our work, not without challenges, but relatively smoothly. We've been able to pivot our work online. So how have we been able to make a difference and continue our feminist leadership work? We've been, for example, able to support domestic violence survivors through the phone, through WhatsApp, through video counseling, through social media. Okay, we've been able to intensify work in that area. We were still able to continue to challenge power structures and unequal practices by engaging with the media online. A lot of that is done through email, through WhatsApp, through the phone, and other online platforms. We organize multiple webinars advocating on issues and raising awareness. So that has been our experience. And I'm aware that it's not the experience of all countries and all communities. But for us, it's a time of reevaluation and a time of taking stock of the opportunities that we have. I think it's very easy to become completely despondent in a time of great negativity. But it's also very important to look at the positive and what opportunities there are. For example, if COVID-19 had not happened, I'm not sure if we would be able to have this webinar and to have this amazing opportunity and conversation to speak at an intergenerational level across different countries at the ASEAN level. You know, so in a sense, it's also brought us closer together across countries. So yeah, I'll stop there, but that in a nutshell has been our experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So, Karen shared on maximizing the accessibility of the internet. Of course, just to add on to that, or it's a good thing that we have the internet now, but and it's also a huge part of WLB's way of connecting with community partners still. But we also want to acknowledge that, of course, internet and the technology that we have now, it's still not everyone or not all communities have the privilege of accessing that. And that's one of the biggest hardships, I think, that the COVID-19 pandemic has also posed. Na, we have this internet, we have the technology, but it's still not free for all accessible thing. That we also have, and it's also something that we also had to defend to funders as well. So, but thank you, Karen, for of course, and you're right that if not for the pandemic, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, or the space. Maybe everyday feminism is a totally different platform, or it wouldn't be able to exist as it does right now. Thank you, Karen. Lastly, for this segment, we have a follow-up question, but we will get to that after Jacinta. Jacinta, were you able to practice feminist leadership during the pandemic? And what are your thoughts on leaving behind feminism outside of work?
Okay. Since last year, the COVID pandemic gave us difficult situation. Because Timor-Leste government, when detected the COVID-19, immediately took action to prevent the transmission by declaring a state emergency. So the implementation of state emergency is affected for the people of Timor-Leste. It's a political problem, like people are stressed, panic, and the implication for social, political, and economic life. So the situation, it's last year until now, continued to give implicate for everyone in Timor-Leste. Many people here is lost their job, lost their income, and people cannot access public facilities as transportation, education, religion activity, and also unsafe situation. It's also continue because what happened in April, flooding in Timor-Leste. So it's continually affected for people here. What women contribution to overcome this situation? I think as a woman, we also practice in our daily life. Same like said by our colleagues before, that we take care for our children, our family. We teach the family how to about the prevention for COVID-19 and how they should follow the health protocol, to wearing mask, washing hand, and still stay at home. And we also educate and accompany our children for online study, because we close the school. So because starting on March until now, it is still lockdown here. So it's really affected for how we will our organization. But we still contribute how to carry out this like social activities, how we can provide like facility and material to support our target group, like student, youth group, and also women. Like we provide mask, hand soap, and also some material that we can distribute to them. giving food and basic need to family that affected by flooding, and provide support to the victim of gender-based violence. As we know that during people stay at home, it's also increasing number of gender-based violence. Also, we try to overcome the economic issue for the women, like providing supporting to the women's group that work in agriculture. So we supporting material for the women's group, so they can increase the production and increase family income. So this is the some activity that we try to carry out. Even the situation, it's also impact for us, for me and my staff and our family, but we still feel responsible morally to help and together in this difficult situation. So during pandemic, the whole activity that I mentioned before, it's not only us working alone or like my organization, but we use that strategy how to coordinate and working with other partner. So we try to coordinate and cooperate with other GSOs for raising food and material aid from various sources or donor, how to in emergency situation we can help the people that affected. And we coordinate with relevant ministry to provide support for the children and also a woman in case they need some assistance. We also cooperate with the media, existing media, to disseminate information through radio, television, and also newspaper and online media. And organizing youth, women's activists, boys and men group, LGBT, and people with disability. We're putting our resource together, how we can join activity for community, providing supporting like food, something that we can do together, like voluntary activity. So, and lastly, we coordinate with this is to attending the victim of gender-based violence. We focus on women and girls. So we coordinate with a referral network at national and local level, how to help the victim to get support because the number of violence during COVID-19 pandemic is increasing, and how can facilitate shelter and other assistance that they needed. So this is some activity that we do during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacinta. I was going to do a follow-up question on how your how working with community partners or how your work with community partners have changed over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's evident that you all already responded to that before the question was even asked. So I think I would do a follow-up question on you seem to all have been able to adjust well to the change that COVID-19 pandemic brought on, especially with working with community partners. But I'm curious to know how did this go over with the funders that you're working with? Because yeah, since this is a totally new territory, totally new challenge, and possibly different from what we began with when 2020 came along, and then COVID-19 began early on, like March. So I for this round maybe let's go with Jelen first.
Why are you throwing me the most difficult question? Throwing it throwing the most difficult question. Okay, so uh, I lost my cue card. Okay, so I think one of the main I think while reflecting, no, on what we have been doing for the past several months, no, or past several weeks, when the lockdown started. I think as early, so I told you that the lockdown in Manila started around March 16, March 17, and it took I think several months, no, before we can eventually officially get out of the, not really city, but get out from your city to another city, but it's still in Metro Manila. So one particular line that I always say to our funding partner is WLB cannot go business as usual. That was actually the main content of our first paper. We cannot, when we say we cannot go business as usual, I think there was a question actually by one of our partners here in terms of how feminist leadership helped during the pandemic. And I think this will be my response, Ate Merlin. So we argue with our funding partners, and Rena knows about this, no, that we cannot talk about capacity buildings or research while our community partners are hungry. Why they don't have food on the table. And again, I don't want to be melodramatic about it, but this was the realities, no. During that time, they don't have food. Some are hungry. Most of them actually are hungry. Not some. Most of them, they don't have food on the table. And then we cannot just say, okay, let's continue, let's plan for our project. So I think that was the main call, no? That we cannot go business as usual. And that's something that I have to put forward up to a certain extent that we might lose the funding, no, from our projects. And I think at that time, I'm ready as executive, because as executive director, you are responsible for the funds. That's basically my main task, to raise funds for the organization and for our partner communities. And if I don't able to do that, then I'm a failure. But basically, I think I'm ready to lose funds, because for me, it's something that you cannot separate, no. That you can separate the project and separate the pandemic. I think it's something that you have to address at the same time. And then I keep on saying that we cannot revise our plan. You keep on asking us to revise our plan. We still don't know what's happening underground. Can you just let us finish first our we call it kamustahan. Kamustahan, it means how are you, no? Our kamustahan with our partners. We haven't talked to them yet. How can we say, hey, we want to know what's happening? Well, in fact, we cannot even give them money, no? So I was a little bit ashamed. I was actually ashamed, not a little bit. I was ashamed that we cannot even give funds to these partner communities. So what we did was to really get not really big amount of funds. Actually, it's very small. But we get it directly from the funds of WLB to share it with our partner communities, just to give them something to buy, rice or anything, no, PPE or even a face mask, no. And we give it to our partner communities because we wanted to show them that we are here even during the pandemic, no. We asked, no, WLB, I asked actually for financial support for the food for the community, and we've been very transparent, no, with our partner communities. But the funding partners, unfortunately, majority of our funding partners said that financial assistance is not part of their mandate or budget line item. I was really frustrated, and those experiences was always reflected in our project reports. Yes, we were able to do this capacity building, but whose expense? No, I was frustrated. I kept on telling our partners, funding partners, we can't go on writing the research or do our training if our partners are hungry. Some would even say, just be creative. But why do we need to be creative about it? Why can't they just say, okay, we are in a pandemic, and yes, you can do some realignment, no, with your budget, no. I think we are losing sight of what development work is. That development work is something that that also address poverty, no? And we cannot just go along with the logical framework of analysis. No, most development workers knows about that. It's basically a box justifying why we're doing this for that, no? And if all those activities does not fit the box, then you cannot fund it, no? So I always say, why don't we address the problem head on? No? Why do we need to be creative? Can we tell our partners, okay, we do the training first and you will get food later? Can we do that? I cannot do that. So usually we will say, okay, if you want to do that, then you go directly. You talk directly to the communities. You go to Samar, you go to Quezon, you go to Zambales, and you go to Talisay and explain to them that, okay, we need to do these activities, and then you will get the food later. No? So at the start of the lockdown, we cannot, so that's basically the one negotiation. Second, in relation to the staff, no? Me, myself, as staff of the organization, as part of WL. At the start of the lockdown, I cannot force the staff to work. I keep telling myself I will not ask them why they don't meet the deadline. I'm a person who doesn't like to accept reports late. No, I don't want late reports. But at that time, Shaira is smiling. But at that time, I cannot force Shaira or anyone, no, to meet the deadline, because I try to be understanding of our limitations and even my own limitations too. If I cannot work today, I will stop. So I keep on telling them, if you cannot work, especially during the first 3 months of the pandemic, you stop working. If you just want to look at the television and watch what's happening, okay, no? But of course, my only request for all my colleagues in WLB is to be strong, and then let's all fight to survive. No, so many work for all of us, but it's a continuing struggle. No, mental health issue is a continuing struggle, even among the staff of WLB, because we feel that we're not accomplishing anything. Because we felt that when we go to the communities, it's our accomplishment. When we go to weave meetings, we do planning face-to-face, it's our accomplishment. But because we're staying at our own home, we stay in our own Zoom meetings, what did we accomplish? So that's very difficult for most of us, no? That we were not able to do face-to-face with our community partners. We feel that we're not doing anything, and therefore maybe we're just wasting money and time. So that's it. I cannot end on a positive note, but I think it's a continuing challenge even up to now in terms of how we always negotiate and practice feminist leadership, no, in our ways of working with our funding partners.
Thank you, Jolene. I don't know what to comment on that, but so who wants to go next? Or do we go to Rena? You want to share next on the same question? How you dealt with funders given the change of pace and activities when the COVID-19 pandemic started?
Yes, Sarah. So the same with Yellen. So because we should be creative for implementing a program by online, and then not all our community has supported mobile phone to do Zoom or Google Meet. So we try to strategize how we can doing the training, doing the discussion through online. So we try to build solidarity among the community. So when one member of community, they don't have supported mobile phone, so they come together to one place, and then they can use the other community member who have supported mobile phones for doing a Zoom or a Google Meet, something like that. So, but during this pandemic, because all activities doing by online, this is also one benefit for us, because we can invite people from not only from our community in Jakarta, in one forum like now, we can invite the community from Yogyakarta, from Tulung Agung, from Cirebon to be joined together in one activity and then learning together. So this is one benefit or I mean this is a good this is good for us. But the challenge is what I said before, that not all of community have supported mobile phone. And then because we have the indicators in the programs that we should achieve, so sometimes it's very difficult to achieve the indicator of the program by only doing the online activity. Because when doing policy advocacy, usually before COVID, we doing lobbying to our parliament member, lobbying to the government by face-to-face because it's very effective. But if only doing by online, by Zoom or by WhatsApp, so it's very difficult to convince the government, to convince the parliament member about what the policy that we want to encourage, the one policy that we want our parliament to be passed. So it's very challenging for us how to make our logic argumentations to our donor in achieving the indicator of project, especially in policy advocacy, because it's difficult, and also raising awareness to community through by online method, because usually the donor will ask us about the change, what the direct change that you see after you doing the activity. Because if usually when we're doing face-to-face training, we can ask directly, we can have a discussion with the participants after training, how they're learning about the training, the material in the training, and then we can know that our training materials can be understood by the participants. But because of we only doing by online, it's very difficult to check whether the information that we give is understood by the people. Because usually we interview one by one or some people of training participant of Kalyana Mitra. So this challenge also for us, and also challenge for Kalyana Mitra, because all of staffs doing working from home, like Jalan's organization. So it's also difficult to control or to monitor the effectiveness of their achievement. I mean, sometimes, yes, there's something happen also. It's very difficult to contact one staff in our organizations to respond some work in Kalyana Mitra, or sometimes it's very hard to push, or to pressure our staff, not pressure, but to ask our staff to achieve the indicators faster, because we should report to the donor, and other challenge that we face because of working from home policy for our staff in Kalyana Mitra. So it's challenge how to work effectively at home, because at home we can do also, yes, like maybe someone join Zoom, but they also doing another things like maybe cooking, like maybe playing with their children. We don't know how our informations accepted or understood by the participant, because we can do other activity. weekend doctor activity, not only working, I mean, doing something at home or household work. Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you, Rena. So it's we're about to reach 2 hours. Since I think this is one of our longest conversations here in Everyday Feminism. So but we have two more questions, I think, for left for this episode. I but of course, we don't want to skip anyone. I would go ahead with Karen if you want to share on the follow-up question about challenges with funders and yeah, the new environment.
Sure, thank you. I'll just be brief. I think at WCC, again, we were incredibly blessed to have had funding that was related to COVID-19 also. We were also very blessed to be able to pivot quickly. And so the funding proposals that we put in, and we did a lot of work trying to raise funds during that time, were mainly to do with online work, online, webinars and e-posters and that sort of thing. And again, we were lucky to have had the people in our organization that were able to pick up those skills quickly, and we moved and delivered that. But of course, we also have had to postpone certain activities that we need to have in person, and those activities are related to advocacy or laws and policies, and for that type of work, I completely agree with Rena. It's difficult to do it online. You need to have face-to-face meetings. And so we're negotiated with one of our funders for a reorganization of that. And thankfully, they have been quite flexible with us. So that conversation is still ongoing. Of course, we are very concerned about the impact on communities that do not have access to digital technology, including communities that are living with disabilities, for example. So we are always thinking of ways to overcome this, and it's an ongoing discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Jacinta? Any similar experience, different with funders,
Okay.
especially?
Yes. In relation to funders, yeah. As I mentioned before, that here in Dili, right now we are in lockdown and state emergency, so we working from home, and then some activity we pending because it's not we consider like we cannot do right now. So related to this, we need to communicate and discuss with our donor about the mechanism and how implementing the activity, including we changing the strategy that already in our plan. So as I think the situation is same with other colleagues already mentioned that the situation now, all activity we carry out via virtual or using media. So the challenges here in Timor-Leste, because the virtual meeting or the activity through media, sometimes it's not effective due to internet connection problem, electricity, and also our target group or community, they're not familiar with using online application. So there is, but for right now, it is not no other way for us how we can continue to doing our activities. So we need to continue via online or using telephone. So since March this year until now, our funding support from donor only for emergency activity. For the regular activity, we pending. So we waiting until the lockdown is open. Yes, that's all.
Thank you, Jacinta, and thank you for sharing those challenges with funders, especially since they're the ones. Of course, we're trying to make everything possible as much as we can, but still it's not plausible, or there's a challenge when we don't have their support, just as you've all shared, especially beginning last year with all the adjustment and changes and revisions, not just with the reality of it, but also on document. Since personally, we've gone through so many revisions in a matter of months, and it's one of the, it's even for me, it's the even bigger challenge than dealing with the real-time adjustments of moving to online world and figuring things out. Yeah. So I guess that's also my way of expressing the frustration of dealing with funders themselves. So for our last segment, I think this is the last segment. Yeah, for our last segment, it's just to I guess from the guests are themselves, hearing from you, there's such a need to emphasize why feminist leadership as a perspective and as a practice is essential, not just during a pandemic, but in our everyday life. So it also goes back to why we have this everyday feminism, to emphasize how essential feminism is in our daily lives, in how we practice ourselves, not just in our work, in our personal lives, in our personal relationships, and especially in the more challenging part of the last year. And now more than ever, as you've all emphasized in your sharings, we need to adhere to feminist principles and values, and how we live our daily lives. So that's also, for me, that's also important, no, how we adhere. I think Ika can also share on how feminist values are basically not just guiding me, but also saving me from every day. So I'm not I may sometimes feel lost and alone, especially during the pandemic, when we were all, of course, still pandemic, all feeling isolated and locked away from our from our usual lives. But the feminist values are there, and just like Karen said earlier, that it's hard to separate oneself as a feminist from work and not feminist outside of work, because when you're a feminist at work, you're a feminist in your everyday life. So that's essential to me as a young feminist, that I have that to believe, I have that to hold, and I have those set of principles and practices as well. So I'm not seeing Ika, so maybe she has a problem with internet. So I'll call on her later, and we will also have and before we go on to the last segment, I just want to read some sharings on the chat. Yeah, so Aileen shared on the chat that she agrees that face-to-face interactions or activities are so much more than online activities. Of course, we see, when we see each other, we get more insights, not just through verbal communication, but also our body language. We fuel each other in a way. Mukip Tulangagong also shared, my headmaster in my school is a woman, and my governor East Java is women. So example, women can be leaders, and we can enjoy because they have the ability to be chief, and not only men can be the leaders. So we apologize for going over time, but this is proof that very evident how fruitful this discussion is. So again, from Karen, let me just read this. Her working from home during lockdown was also a challenge. Several senior management took voluntary unpaid leave or pay cuts to donate a portion of salaries back to the organization. Wow. And that's also a hard decision to make, especially during a pandemic. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. So I guess Ika is here, but I still don't see her. So I will proceed. We will proceed to the last segment. Feminist leadership, is there a boundary? So we heard all your answers earlier that you take feminism not just at work, but you practice it every day in your everyday life, your family, your relationships, different spaces. Um, there are challenges and successes, of course, failures which are impossible to avoid, failures where we learn from and then improve on ourselves. Aside from looking after our organizations and partner communities, is it automatic as feminists that we extend our leadership values as to issues concerning our nation and government? So you've mentioned family, relationship, personal circles, and work. But how about dealing with the issues in our nation or perpetuated by the government? So whether it's advocacy work to fair elections or advocating democracy, dealing with human rights violations or killing of human rights activists. So how does it are you able to extend your feminist values in those kinds of advocacy work? So this time, I'll go ask Jacinta first. I hope the question was clear.
Okay. Regarding with Timor-Leste situation right now, I think the political situation is as very challenge for us. So difficult also, for example, the news about solidarity for the Myanmar. This is one the challenges for us to question about our government position. They are abstaining to supporting about the human rights violation in Myanmar. So as civil society and also like human rights activists, we think we bringing this issue also to asking for the government position why they are not like keep supporting for the solidarity for Myanmar. It's we discussing because regarding with our struggle during occupation, many solidarity come from outside, from our college.
I guess we lost Jacinta. Are you there? Jacinta, I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
Connection problem.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. So it is like calling our attention together as a woman activist, also feminist activist. We are like concerned how our government putting human rights violation as like a priority to see it in other country, but it's like in as the context of to say that, yeah, I mean like this is so sad for us. Personally, I'm so sad with this position. So we are trying today to mobilize together as civil society and activism, how we can talking and advocate with our government to, because this is the
Oh, okay. So Jacinta is in and out. Maybe she's also having connection problems. I'm not the only one who lost her. she's not here for you as well. Yeah, okay. So we will circle back to Jacinta later. So I'll go to Karen.
Thank you, Shaira.
Yeah.
Some of you, well, most of you may know that in Malaysia, we didn't only have the COVID crisis, in early 2020, we had a double crisis in terms of an unexpected change of government through a coup popularly known as the Sheraton move. And so that was a real blow to us as the rakyat, as the people, because some of us, of course, had worked very hard to achieve change at the level of the federal government after decades of rule by the previous government. So since then, things have been politically volatile as well and somewhat turbulent. And many efforts towards the upholding of women's human rights, for instance, the passing of sexual harassment legislation, have been stalled, not only because of the pandemic, but also because of the political instability. So how we, very clearly, women's groups are very active in this. As you know, Malaysia is still in a state of emergency, and we are in the process of advocating for reopening of parliament, because you cannot have democracy put on hold. Women's rights are on the line, and so this needs to go on. So this is a key area of engagement that we continue to work on, alongside efforts to engage the executive arm of government, the ministries, the departments, and the media, and so on. Media is not part of government, but we continue to engage in the media. The other aspect of our work that has gone on in terms of the political aspect is WCC's work with the sub-national government or the state government of Penang, which has launched something called the Safe Family Policy in response to the rising rates of domestic violence during COVID-19. So WCC has partnered with the state government and has been funded by the state government to run trainings for first support points. These are representatives from the ground to render emergency support to survivors of domestic violence. So we train them, we have issued a handbook of resources, and we're looking forward to continue this training and this partnership at the sub-national level as well. So yes, that feminist advocacy is very much well and alive in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So Jacinta, I still can't see Jacinta back. So I'll call on Rena.
Yes, Sarah. So the situation now in Indonesia is also the same with other countries. So now our government is more prioritized to address the problem of economic and health because of COVID. So the issue of women's or gender issues is becoming marginalized and not prioritized by the government and our parliament member. And we have a lot of cases because of COVID. There is increasing number of cases of domestic violence, and then the victim of domestic violence they don't know where to report or how to report their case, because all same in Malaysia also. The services from the government is only provided by online. So even they go to the police or they go to the legal aid provided by the government, like crisis center provided by the government. So the officer, or the police advise the victim to postpone the case, so until the situation is better. And then the process of the case in the police is very slow because of COVID. And we also have a lot of cases on sexual violence against women and girls. And then we don't have a law to protect the victim of sexual violence. The existing law not enough to protect the victim of sexual violence, and we try to advocate the bill on the elimination of sexual violence in the parliament member. But the parliament member, because they don't prioritize the gender issues, the women issues in their agenda, So it's very difficult to push, to pressure our government, our parliament member to pass this bill. So this is very challenging for women movement to do the advocacy during this pandemic. But we try to do public awareness raising through our social media. But for the parliament and government, it's quite difficult to do for advocacy.
Okay. Thank you, Rena. So I think Jacinta's back, but Jacinta, if you can hear us, you can share if internet's still a problem, you can share your insights on the chat, and then we can read it out loud. Yeah. So I'll go to Jalen first, and then circle back to Jacinta. Thank you, Rena.
So the question, Shire, if I'm not mistaken, is it automatic, extend our leadership values to issues concerning
our nation?
So I think it's easy to say that it's not automatic. I think there are a lot of people doing developmental work that it's not automatic. No? It depends how invested you are to the cause, or we call it in Tagalog, kosa. The cause of your movement, which is basically the feminist movement. What kind of involvement do we want in the so-called cause? Do we want to create a wall between, separating our job from the life that we live in? Can I be pro-poor but select a president which is not pro-poor? Can I work for human rights but the president that I will elect does not believe in human rights? Can I fight for women's rights and tell our partner communities and women that we would respect women, and protect women from any form of violence, but I will elect a president or a senator or a mayor who condones or who accepts violence against women, malign women, and are fond of rape jokes? I think if I will do that, there will be a lot of inconsistencies with my principles and my life. Therefore, I may not be able to call myself feminist on days that I do not represent WLB, because I chose to be feminist only when I'm with my family and when with my organization. I think basically what I'm trying to say is it's not automatic, but it's a choice that we do. It's a choice that I make to bring my feminist values and principles also in terms of in my political life or in my political practice, in the way we practice political life. So when I elect someone because I believe in women's rights, that person should believe in human rights. If I believe in democracy, that person should believe in democracy. I think I'm a work in progress, and my kind of feminism, quote and unquote, extends to how I look at politics and policies of the government and various issues. I think my kind of feminism keeps me grounded. It keeps me sane. It makes it clear where do I stand and what I'm fighting for.
Thank you, Jalen. That's very insightful. I'm wondering if we can go back and call on Jacinta now, if her internet connection is better.
Yeah. Yes, sorry. Yes, I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to emphasize issue that I'm raising related with human rights violation in Myanmar and Timor-Leste government positions. So as I shared it, it's very sad for us. And then we criticize our government about this. So because Timor-Leste has a long history about human rights violation, and we got solidarity come from many colleagues in other countries, including Myanmar. So we think that we not tolerate any violation, human rights violation. If our government show the commitment to about the how to protect human rights, but in reality, they just keep silence about another violation in our colleagues in other countries. So this is it's I think it's like a question mark for us, like human activism, and then also civil society. So we starting yesterday requesting for our national parliament and also government to explain about this, and we do our advocacy how government can maybe through another way to give the support and solidarity for our Myanmar people. So yeah, like this is the some issue that I think I want to share with you all, because I know that Indonesia and other country, maybe you also accompany and hear about this issue. So it's not mean like in Timor-Leste, all our government position is representing all Timorese people. But this is something that we need to discussing how we can support government to see about the human rights violation. So yeah, just to share about this for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacinta. And thank you for those. It's Jelen, you want to say something? You turned on your mic.
Yes, before you conclude, Shira, because I think Ika just made a mistake. But Ika sent me direct message of translation, which of our participants, which because it was a direct message, I cannot copy it. So I think it's good to read, no? From Sada, feminist leadership in the community during the pandemic feels even more challenging because apart from the limitations of the community for using technology, that work constraint quotas because they have to share it with their children who also need a lot for schoolwork. There are many women whose burdens have increased during this pandemic because almost all of our members are doing a lot of things from home, working from home. The strategies we have implemented to implement feminist leadership in the community during the pandemic include inviting them to share with them on themes that can help reduce their burden. For example, on how to manage your problems because of the burden, work, sharing online information about surviving the economy during the pandemic. And then there's another one from P3. In my opinion, we must continue to carry out domestic tasks. Plus, we must be able to become teachers for children to learn online, and also must remain active in the activities we are engaged in our respective communities, even though only online. Because now in the era of globalization, pandemic, but even if we have to leave the house, we must also implement the health procedure. So for example, I have to act as a mother and also as a wife at home, but I also have to continue to carry out my duties as a cadre in my village, as an activist. And sometimes I have to attend meetings at the sub-districts and so on. Of course, I also have to always take care of myself by continuing to apply health protocol. So that's it, Shaira.
Thank you. So that was actually the last formal question for our episode today. So we just have the piece of advice question for our guest. But it's how would I can find an adjective to describe it, but it's insurmountable, I guess, the burden or the multiple burdens, as you've all mentioned, to women in not just in the past year, but especially in the past year, because we were dealing with working from home, like Rena said earlier, as advocates, as women workers, we weren't just working from home, but we were also dealing with taking care of children or taking care of our family. I'm not a mother, or I don't have children of my own. I live with my mother, but still I have to I have to think of my mom. I have my mom to think about. I have my brother to think about. There are personal problems that you have to deal with while working from home, and it adds on to your duties and responsibilities. And then as feminists, we're also trying to figure things out on how to continue our work with communities, or how we go with our responsibilities for work. And then there's also the added layer of, just like Jalen has said, we can always be feminists, but we have to apply the feminist principles in dealing with the problems of the nation, especially just for example in the Philippines. It was overwhelming, the amount of things you would see in everyday news, especially when you were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic at the beginning of 2020. So, and as feminists, we were dealing with all of that all at once. Still, we were, as you've all said, or as you've all shared, we were still able to work through it, and we're still working through it until now. And I hope to see that one of the most essential things that I've heard in everyday feminism in one of the past episodes was I hope that to see that one day we're no longer part of the resistance, but we're the norm. And I think that can still be applied here today with all the sharings that yes, we are part of the resistance. There's so much to resist. There's so much to resist. There's so much to apply feminist practices and principles to. But I guess feminist leadership is so essential that it's basically in every space that we occupy and move in as feminist leaders. So, given that, for the very last question for our participants or for our guests and participants as well, before wrapping up, very briefly, for you, what is the future of women and or feminist movements? What can be done, or what can be your advice to younger feminists like me and Ika and anyone who is watching us right now? So let me begin with the Karen. A short piece of advice.
Hi. You actually have two very important questions there. So I'll try to I'll answer the first and then the second. So in terms of the future, the foreseeable future with COVID, I think it's something that we have to deal with for some time to come. I have no visibility about when the pandemic is going to end. But what is evident to me is the increasing dependency on the digital space. And so we need to plug gaps in the digital divide. We need to enable women and marginalized communities with the resources to do that, with the internet connectivity and the skills to stay plugged in. Secondly, we need to ensure that feminist spaces like these are maintained and increased. We need to keep going. Don't shut that down. So whatever happens, we still need to keep the connection. And thirdly, I think we didn't have time to talk about it today, but we need to start inculcating more rigorous analytical skills among our younger feminists, particularly systems thinking rather than issues-based. For example, violence against women and children is the manifestation of much deeper systemic issues, including economic injustice. And these issues are highly globalized, they're highly interconnected, but we are all sort of working in silos in our own communities without getting a feel of the bigger picture. So I think it's really important that we start strengthening and sharpening our analysis that way. And finally, what I have to say to not just my younger feminist brothers and sisters there, but also all friends, is take care of yourselves. I think amidst the pandemic, we think of so many things, but we must never forget the importance of self-care. If you, to some extent, like I said, looking at the seriousness and the severity of the problem can sometimes paralyze you. It's so terrible that you feel that so down, you just see all the problems and you don't know how to move or what to do. But it's so important that you take care of your physical and mental health at this point in time. So one way that you may need to do this is actually to know when to disengage. With technology, you're constantly plugged in 24/7. I don't know about you, but I am, and people are constantly online or WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram or Zoom or email or whatever. But you may need to put a stop to that and say, hey, I need this time for myself, take a little bit of a break. And don't forget to do something that you love every day if you can, whether it's to sing or to draw or to paint, or to talk to a friend or a loved one. Make sure that you put in that effort, whether it's a small habit or a small ritual, to care for yourself and to nurture that part of you that needs support. So that would be my little takeaway piece of advice, and I hope we can all do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I want to call on next Jacinta, if she's here. Yeah, Jacinta's here.
think.
Jacinta?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, for the last question, what for you is the future of women or feminist movements, and what is your advice for younger feminists like me?
Yeah. Yeah, for the future, I think uh, I have three points that I suggest, like when we pass this situation, the pandemic, we starting to organize and more structure the way of work with focusing developing community and also addressing issues facing by women. And second, increasing women leading in feminist movement. I think this is the opportunity to get more young women like you and others young women. And the last one is build strong networking with others group or movements, including the people with disability and also what I mean about the LGBT group. So we make our movement is inclusive. Yeah, so this is three things that I think I can advise. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacinta. Yeah, get more young women like me. Let's collect. Let's this encourage more. And how do we do that? No. Next, Rena.
Yes, Sayura. So for the younger feminists everywhere, so be yourself and then don't stop learning about feminism, because learning feminism is a long process, because we can learn feminism not only from the book. We can learn feminism from our experience in daily life. So I mean, talking about feminism, not only theory, but we can practice in our daily life. Sometimes we know the theory, the values of, or the principles of the feminist or feminism, but we cannot apply in our daily life, in the family, in the community. So don't stop learning on feminism, and then also keep in the feminist movement, because sometimes for young feminists they feel frustrated because it's very hard struggle for feminist agenda. So don't give up, keep struggle for women's rights, and then ask other young people to learn about feminism through interesting way of young people way, because maybe through discussion, through training is not interesting for young people. You can develop more fun method or strategy to engage more young people to become a feminist in the future.
Thank you, Rena. Yeah, that's something we will be taking note of. What fun methods or innovative methods we can do to get more young women or young feminists to join the collective movement. Lastly, let's call Jillian.
Okay, so thank you to all our participants. Sorry we had an extension today because I think we had the highest number of participants for today, and I think what we're discussing is very timely. And as part of those small movements, whether in our own communities, in our own village, in our own organization, I think as someone doing work on women's movement, on feminist movement, we cannot just stay in those small groups. No? We cannot work in silo. We cannot work separately with other groups. I think the feminists are here to stay. That's our goal, to not to be part of the resistance. But I think it will really take a long while to be not part of that resistance because of those issues that we have been discussing since day one, no? Violence and so on and so forth. So we cannot work in silo, and we need to be part of the bigger movement. No? Even though we're just the only feminists inside that movement, we need to expose ourselves and be proud and out as feminists, no? To take that space, to be the voice that others cannot do because they are voiceless or because they are marginalized. I think we have a lot of this. There's a lot of comments in the chat box, even accessibility issue of disability groups, LBTs, and other groups, no? And if you can be the voice, no, because they cannot do it yet, then why not, no? We always say, why not coconut, no? So as feminists, we have to walk the talk. I think that's one main recommendation. As feminists, we have to walk the talk. As feminists, as young feminists, we should not be afraid of that space. We should not be afraid to voice out whatever we want to say. It's okay to commit mistake, but it's difficult to be feminist if we cannot preach what we cannot practice. Feminist values for me is a way of life. So for young feminists out there, it's a way of life. It's not an in thing or an out thing. It's a way of life. It is something that we practice every day and do every day. But as I've said earlier, feminists are humans and we commit mistakes. No? We are not perfect individuals. A couple of times people are very much afraid when I usually introduce myself as feminist. But I think it's something that I believe in and something that I value. That's why I use it as an introduction. But what is important is that we try to do better every day. No? For young women like Ika and Shaira, for the younger and also the older generation, that we will try to change, no? And listen, no? to everybody, and especially to improve or for a better future, for a better feminist future, or for a better future for our feminists, younger feminists. So maraming salamat, terima kasih, and thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to read a couple of comments from our Filipino participants here with us today. So Ate Aileen shared that I like your advice for the young feminists, very inspiring. So I think she's commenting this for all the guests. And Ate Nelly, also from the Philippines, feminism is an everyday struggle to impart, to be heard, that women have a voice and the right. She also mentioned social institutions. So thank you, Ate Nelly and Ate Aileen. And we have an overwhelming number of comments in our chat, and this is also new. And we can't read them all now, but we will take note of them and have them translated as part of our documentation for this event. So thank you so much for everyone who commented and became part of this discussion, even though it's through chat. So before we close out, I can see Ika is back, so I just want to ask her as well. Ika, what is your if there's anything notable from today, from today's episode, something that struck you the most? Can you share what your favorite part of today's episode is? Ika? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, my connection is really bad. So this is the closing. Yeah. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What your favorite part of the episode today is? Just so because we've been missing you. So is there anything that struck you?
Yeah. I'm sorry because my connection is lagging, so I can hear clearly. But I read all the comment to chat. Yeah, all the comment. So from this discussion, I think I gain a lot of insight. Yeah, from participant and also from the guest on how we must mainstream the feminist values during this pandemic area, like the strategy and how how to deal with it, and also it's really enrich my perspective, because we heard and because I heard and I also learned from the different perspective, yeah, from our diverse guests and also from the participant. So I'm proud to be a feminist, and thank you for the advice for young feminists. I still identified myself as young feminist, even though I participate already. So thank you, and also thank you for sharing your stories, insight, and experience, and also to the participant. Thank you for the active participation. Shahira?
Yeah. Thank you, Ika. So, I guess we joke about it here in the Philippines that when it's 5 p.m., it's even harder to maintain a good internet connection. So, I guess that's what we're experiencing. But truly, today's participant number is overwhelming, and it's really good to see so many people here and in the chat box, very interactive. And another comment from the Philippines, Ate Marlene from Samar. She said that today's discussion was very good and very inspiring for her. So she extends her thanks from Samar. So, and yeah, so for me, I guess as we're closing, it's really I'm running out of adjectives. It's really great to learn, as I've said earlier, for a young feminist like me to learn from older feminists, not older in age, but in experience, to learn how to keep on going, not to be better, but to keep on going, and especially in these struggling times. And, just we're not exactly the voice of the marginalized, but we're trying to help them find a platform for their own voices, as we ourselves are trying to find our own voices in such contexts and situations in our own countries and in our own personal spaces. So we thank the guests and participants for joining us every week, but it's also humbling to be organizing this kind of space where feminists come and share their personal experiences and stories in a way that maybe it hasn't been done before. And so everyday feminism is our baby, and I'm glad to be sharing this all with feminists from all over Southeast Asia. So thank you once again, Karen, Jacinta, Jelen, and Rena, and everyone from Philippines, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, and Malaysia. I hope to see you all. We hope to see you all next time for another episode of Everyday Feminism, a way of life. Maraming salamat. Terima kasih, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. And then
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jalen.
Can we have the